All right, welcome back to Beer Bracket Sessions, everybody. Today's an extremely, extremely special one. If you've been watching the channel for the past couple of years, you might have seen that we did have a chance to speak with Mr. Steve Gilsenan before, but he's honored us with his presence and come back on the channel to chat with us again. Steve, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back.
Of course, of
Thank
course.
you.
So Steve is
It's a pleasure.
the head of quality for Diageo, correct? Global head of quality. So, I mean, the last time we had a chance to chat, we did have a really, really, really in-depth conversation about, of course, Guinness, us being huge Guinness fans, and his role at Diageo, working on Guinness, of course, historically in his roles in the past. Recently posted a review of Guinness Zero. And you can see by checking out the views on that particular review, there's a lot of interest on Guinness Zero right now. For a couple of different reasons, right? So, I mean, non-alcoholic products in general are having a bit of a surge right now in popularity. And also just a non-alcoholic Guinness is just fascinating in itself, right? Everybody wants to know, how is it? Is it good? Is it like a real Guinness? If you watch the review, we loved it. We think it's a fantastic alternative if you're looking to have a non-alcoholic drink one evening. So we do have a ton of questions about Guinness. Is there anything you're willing to tell us about the history of it, the current state of the product, what the plans are for it moving forward? And I see that you have one to have with us today too, which is very fitting.
I do. I have it here. Yeah, I have the can, the US size can here, and I actually have the US glass as well here that we have available in the US at the moment. So I'll pour and have a beer with you, a non-alcoholic beer with you.
Yes. Perfect. So, Alessandro, I think you have a classic Guinness can to have on
Yes,
today.
I just have a classic Guinness. I kind of had to with being here with Steve, and I figured I could not pass on that opportunity to have another Guinness with him. So yeah, that's gonna be my choice here for today.
Absolutely. And Steve, I don't know if we do have time and you're willing to chat about this a little bit. I do have a can of Kilkenny here.
Sure.
I thought, why not having you on the channel here? Maybe if there's anything that, I have a lot of.
I'm actually in Kilkenny.
That's right. I know. Yeah, that's one of the reasons where I was like, I know he lives there.
This is my garage, and I think even it has developed. So when we spoke last, I think we were still in COVID, weren't we? Lockdown and everything.
Yes. We were.
So, COVID, so I was based here. This was the bunker where microdraft
the beer bunker
was tested, and where NitroSurge was actually born.
Wow.
Here, all the testing on NitroSurge was done here. So this is my garage. I've added a bit to it since you were last here as well. But I'm actually, I live in Kilkenny, so I learned how to be a brewer in the Kilkenny brewery. So delighted to talk about Kilkenny as well.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. Yeah. Okay. So we do definitely want to chat about Guinness Zero to start with, but yeah, I will pick your brain a little bit about Kilkenny afterwards. Yeah. Maybe let's pour these out. Let's get started and have ourselves a nice chat.
Let's do that.
Yeah, this is one of my favorites. Alessandro, as you know, Steve, I'm sure Alessandro has. I don't know if it's available in the States at all, but he definitely has trouble getting it in Florida.
Yeah, it's available. It's available in the US.
Oh man, Alessandro, you got to look harder.
I think.
I got to do that. Yeah.
Actually, no.
I haven't seen it in Florida.
Correct. We do. Cheers. We
cheers.
do. Cheers, beautiful Guinness Zero, and my Guinness glass fills it perfectly to the top. Cheers.
Look at that.
I love it. Cheers.
No, I stand corrected. What we distribute in the US are three main beers we distribute. Obviously, Guinness and Guinness Zero now, Smithwick's Ale,
yes,
and Harp Lager would be the three big global brands you would see. So rather than have Kilkenny, you might find Kilkenny in spots, but Smithwick's would be more available across the country.
I can find at the local grocery store, and it's a great favorite of mine. But yeah, Kilkenny, I haven't unfortunately been. I've seen it a couple of times in pubs. Yeah, no, as available in cans, like at least here where I'm at. But like Joe said, I have to look harder.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think it is. Yeah, it is in Canada, all right.
Yeah, it's extremely popular in Canada too, right? I don't know. You can tell me how true this is, maybe if you have this information or not. But just according to Wikipedia, Montreal specifically, where I live, it says that they sell more Kilkenny than anywhere else in North America, and it's just extremely popular here for some. And I can remember even as long any corner store here, you can go in and you can find a 4-pack of cans of Kilkenny, and that's kind of always been the case. And it's every pub, especially if it's an Irish pub, but any pub that carries more than just the standard sort of like macro lagers will normally have Kilkenny on tap too. It's just always been very popular in the city here.
Yeah, it's always been popular in Canada. Whether Montreal, I'm not 100% whether it is where we sell more than anywhere else. Probably Well, because it's not so widely available in the US.
Right.
Definitely, from a
Right.
North American point of view, it's the biggest seller in North America, Montreal. Then I wouldn't be surprised. Maybe I don't know whether Toronto would sell more,
Yeah.
which is a huge Guinness popularity as well.
Hmm.
But I'd well believe it.
Okay, well, we'll get back to. I definitely have questions about Kilkenny. I'd love to pick your brain about, but the big topic we wanted to talk about was Guinness Zero, of course. So I think the first question to pose to you here is, how long was Guinness Zero in the makings for? It seems like when you taste it, you can tell that obviously, okay, this is a very, very well refined product. The quality is top notch. But so I'd imagine there was an extensive amount of planning that went into that, or a long period of test brewing and
Yeah.
making adjustments to the recipe, so on and so forth.
Yeah. So, well, I guess adjustments to the recipe, it was making sure we didn't do that. It's probably the most important thing with Guinness
Right.
Zero.
Right.
So it took just over 4 years to develop Guinness Zero, from our amazing brewers and technical team starting to work on the technology that we could use to produce Guinness Zero, to then launching in 2021, shortly after we spoke, when we launched it. So it took 4 years, and the premise was, when you talked about recipes, was what we wanted was a Guinness a Zero which has everything Guinness has. So if you saw how I poured it, the same widget, the same surge, the same
Yeah.
settle, the same experience people get with Guinness Draft, you get with Guinness Zero as well. And even on the taste. So that's what we wanted. That's what the challenge was. And that's what the challenge that was put to our brewers and our scientists. How can we match everything that people love about Guinness Draft in a zero alcohol version? So that took a long time. So from landing the technology that we use, there's loads of technologies out there, and there's loads of literature written on the different technologies out there to remove alcohol from beer. Some brewers never brew it in the first place. Some brewers use a heat treatment process to remove the alcohol. We use what we call cold filtration.
Hmm.
So we use a cold filter process. So we brew Guinness all the way through, and then we remove the alcohol at the end, but keeping the process cold. We don't heat up the process specifically to remove the alcohol. So, and that again retains the flavor integrity of the product as you go through. So, developing that process, then going into test, then going into flavor match and everything else over the years took us a long time until we were happy, and we were never going to release until we were absolutely happy that
Yeah.
we had nailed the quality. So yeah, that took 4 years.
It's a fascinating journey hearing it described from you, and what I like the most about is the commitment to quality that seems to kind of be a signature with all the Guinness products, but in particular with this, like when we reviewed it together, I think we both had the same reaction in the sense that, wow, like, I mean, this is the most close experience that you could possibly imagine, and it's just like so unbelievably good. You mentioned about the cold filtration process. Is that a technique that you guys developed? Was it something that was available before, or can you
No,
expand if
so
at all
the,
possible on that?
I can't get into too many secrets about how we do it, but
Of course, no, of course,
no, the,
of
the
course.
technology we use, the cold filtration technology we use, no, it's out there. There's literature about it. You can read about the technique we
Mhm.
use, how we do it for Guinness Draft, and then how we then finish off our product at the end, release Guinness Zero. Well, that's obviously our secret in terms of our
The signature,
recipes
yes.
and how we do it. But no, the cold filtration tech that we worked with, that technique, that tech exists in and exists before. It's not ours. It's we worked obviously with suppliers in terms of how we that would be set up for Guinness Zero. How what we do with our Guinness to produce our Guinness Zero. Well, that's our secret.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Have you found it's interesting that you mentioned, you didn't want to release it before, of course, before you're completely satisfied with it, because I think, especially with non-alcoholic beers, I find that people are a little bit quick to make a judgment call on it. So if they have a favorite beer and they try it, if it's something that for whatever reason in the moment they're not enjoying, they might just write it off moving forward. So that first impression with it, I'm sure for you guys was so important. Like, we need this to be as close as possible. The experience, like, obviously the body of the beer, the whole experience of, like you said, having the widget cans, pouring it out, getting the surge, and like seeing something as identical to normal Guinness draft as possible to sort of
Yep.
rope people in right away and be like, okay, I can feel good about this. This is something where I can drink this whenever I want to, whenever I need to, whenever I want to avoid having the alcohol, of course. And it's going to give me as close to an experience as possible. And then so you don't distance or push away maybe the people who are traditionalists, I should say, right? Who are maybe a little standoffish about it.
Yeah. I think, yeah, that's the joy
Yeah.
in my job, and anyone who works on Guinness. It's the joy and it's the challenge of working for Guinness.
Right.
We hold ourselves to the highest standards of quality, and we always have. So
Yeah.
take Guinness Zero aside for a second. Anything we do on Guinness, whether it's Guinness Draft, Guinness Foreign Extra in Africa, to the smallest batch we brew in our Baltimore plant or our Open Gate in Dublin or even in Chicago, anywhere we brew, we hold our standard. We have the highest standards no matter the scale and size of what we brew. And that's the same for Guinness Zero. But that's the joy of what we do. That's what we do every day, from our brewers to what I do to everyone across the business. The challenge is then everyone holds Guinness to that high standard. So when you do anything on Guinness, our consumers, our adorers, everyone expects us to be at that standard in everything that we do as well.
Yeah.
We're held to a very high standard on quality, and that's what we aspire to, and that's what we aim at. When I talk about perfection, like we talk about the perfect pint, I have a slightly different stance on that. And perfection is always out there. Perfection is something you're aiming at. If you say you're perfect, you're not trying hard enough. So quality is always a journey in terms of constantly improving, focusing on quality. And that's what we do. That's what we do every day. So Guinness Zero was no different. And we had to make sure that the quality that we put out there was the best quality we can do. And that was the feedback we got. Like some of the, like there is sensory, as you guys know, sensory is very subjective when you taste a beer. You taste with your eyes, you taste with your mind as well as everything else.
Yeah.
So when you tell someone this is it's like this is a Guinness Zero, can you tell it apart? Of course, the answer is going to be, of course I can tell it apart, because you've just told them which is the draft and which is the zero. So of course I can tell you. And I observed that myself a little bit in the early stages of the development. And they say, yeah, but if you give Guinness Zero, and I did this, and this is probably one of the fun stories of Guinness Zero development, was watching.
Did you do blind taste tests?
Drinks journalists doing blind taste testings.
Really?
With me, and they were tricky to do during COVID and all that. We weren't able to do a lot of them. A lot of them we did on Zoom. But what was really fun was when you give people Guinness Zero and they say, yeah, that's great, but I can tell it's a zero. And then you say, okay, we're going to give you two small glasses like this. Two little glasses like this. One will have Guinness Draft, one will have Guinness Zero, and I want you to tell me which is which and why.
Yeah.
And I am genuinely saying nobody could actually say absolutely that's a zero and could absolutely tell me why. Some people were like, yeah, I think that's a zero, and they might have been wrong and they might have been right. Most were completely bamboozled because you're tasting the same liquid in the same way. And that's how close Guinness Zero is. Is to draft. And you see the surge and the settle and the head and the texture, all of those cues that Guinness Draft has, Guinness Zero has as well. So, and because we brew it in the same way, like there is no, like we use, it's the same hops, the same roasted barley, the same process. We brew it, we ferment it, we mature it, we filter it. And then if you imagine the beer is ready to go to our keg plants or our packaging lines, at that point we remove the alcohol. So we've done everything else. And if you remove the alcohol in the gentle way we do, you retain all the other flavor. And that's what the magic of Guinness Zero is. And the feedback has been phenomenal. The feedback has been all across the world. Like I've had messages, DMs on Instagram from Australia saying this is the greatest day. I for personal reasons, I haven't been able to drink alcohol anymore. Guinness Zero this is the greatest day. We now have Guinness Zero in Australia. Like some really lovely messages about how much people love the product, and people who drink it to moderate as well. So we're seeing more and more occasions are changing. People are moderating. Guinness Zero is an absolutely super alternative. if you're just moderating, or or you're driving, or whatever else. Some of the stories from my neighbours here, for example, and this is slightly different to Guinness Zero. When we were testing NitroSurge, for example, we were developing it, we were in lockdown here, so I was testing it here, and I had no benchmarks because we couldn't give it to anybody. So I used to put on a mask and gloves and walk to my neighbours' houses every Saturday, knock on their door, and give them pints. And they would, unknowing to them, they were tasting NitroSurge. They thought I had a keg, and I was just being a friendly neighbor.
God,
So
like
we were doing inadvertent consumer testing when we couldn't do proper testing, and that's what we were feeding back in. Yeah, neighbors like it; they think it's draft, they think it's a keg. But what I did, one of the neighbors then, as things opened up, you were allowed to have groups in the back of your house, and I met a friend of mine was at the house, and I saw him outside, and I said, "Why aren't you?" He goes, "Oh," I said, "I'm driving. I feel like I'm not part of the event." So I gave him a pint glass and a couple of cans of Guinness Zero, and I said, he came back and he goes, "The experience is totally different because you're holding a pint glass. So you're holding a pint. You feel more part of the occasion because you're holding a glass. And even if you don't want people to know you're moderating, some people don't. Some people don't want, so they don't want to be asked, why are you drinking a soft drink or something like that. There is some people just, so you're now holding a Guinness. And you're holding a Guinness, and you're part of the group, and you're part of the round, which is culturally so important in a country like Ireland.
That's right.
That you're part of the round, you're part of the group, you feel part of the group, even if you're not consuming alcohol. And I think all of those cues that Guinness brings to the occasion now, because we're even testing Guinness in keg. We have Guinness Zero in keg in about 1,200 bars in Ireland. So coming from keg systems through draft lines. So now people are experiencing 2-part pours, full Guinness Zero pint glasses.
That's amazing.
Coming from a keg system. So it's again giving all of our consumers all of those cues of Guinness draft that they all know and love, but without the alcohol.
Steve, I know you're a big fan. You're like a nerd for the glassware, right? Is that for Guinness Zero? Do they just have? I've seen like the tulip style glass like this with the 00 on it. Is that the only one that's out there right now, or are there more coming?
Currently in Ireland, that is the glass. It is the tulip style Guinness Zero.
Yeah.
We have got. I'm not sure I have it here. This is the US one, which is the single zero, which is what we
right. Yeah. So the Canadian one is the same. Yeah.
Yeah, we have it, and then we have got a gravity style. I don't think I actually have one here. Gravity style. So that's the gravity glass. Guinness Zero as well in the UK. I haven't actually got one here. You've just reminded me. I probably need to add one to the collection.
Yeah, your glassware collection is unbelievable.
Got that one here, yeah. And everyone, my glassware collection I'm very proud of. But a lot of people think I can settle this now because the answer on Instagram is I actually buy a lot of my glassware on eBay and on adverts and so on. A lot of people think this is all insider information where I get my hands on glassware. I do get some cool ones for any US
there you go,
audiences.
Awesome.
The Bengals glass, so those I get sent samples of just to check quality. But a lot of the older glassware I pick up from connections. I swap glasses. A guy in Kilkenny who I swap glassware with. He picks up stuff at car boot sales, and I do the same, and we swap. So it's a kind of aside from the work hobby that I have is old Guinness glassware.
That's awesome.
Do you ever go to like yard sales and stuff? Alessandro, you had that interesting experience, right? Walking in your neighborhood recently.
Yeah, I go to charity shops as well. Anytime we're in a new town or a village with my family, and I see a charity shop, I go in and have a look around. And I picked up not glassware. Most recently, I picked up vintage Guinness playing cards.
That's cool.
Oh, look at that.
These ones haven't even been opened yet in a charity shop in a town called Wexford in the south of Ireland. I picked up those. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, so you always find stuff. And the most recent glassware I got, where is it now? From my pal in Kilkenny. This one here he picked up in a car boot sale in Kilkenny, which is a classic.
Nice. Look at that,
beautiful.
Wow.
So we picked
How old is that?
And so we swapped a few glasses this week actually. I have a Shankarla glass back there as well. I have some other beer brands up in the top there as well.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to ask, talking about Guinness and the glasses you mentioned, like the difference between the US and the and the Irish glass. The brand itself, like the fact that it's marketed as 0.0 and 0. Can you expand a little bit on that? Because there's a lot of talk online, like is this a different beer?
It's exactly the same beer. There's only one Guinness Zero. We can set that record straight. There's only one Guinness Zero. It's about how zero alcohol beers are classified in different markets from a regulatory point of view. So the alcohol limits on to say non-alcoholic is less than 0.05%, and that's where we are. There was a question with regulatory in the US around if you have 0.0 on the glass, does that mean you're actually at 0.0 versus where all non-alcoholics are? So what was the agreement was that in order to be compliant or not to have any question we're compliant or not, we just put a single 0 on the glass. So it's more of a regulatory definition of zero alcohol, but guaranteed 100%. The Guinness Zero in the US and Canada is exactly the same as the Guinness Zero in Ireland.
Makes sense, yeah.
And that's really honestly like obviously the answer that you can find on all Guinness, like, but there's talk online, like, and honestly, like the experience, because it's just like anything else that Guinness makes, like it's just like consistent globally, which is always something that we talk about a lot. Like it's just mind blowing when you think that you can, go pretty much anywhere and, go to a pub and you have a Guinness there. And it's, first of all, it's there. That's the first thing. And then second, like you get like that experience. Like, so that's, it's just something I thought I would mention to bring into the conversation and straighten out
there's so
that.
many unfortunate Guinness rumors out there, right? Like,
there is. And it comes down to that's the joy and the challenge of working with Guinness. It's the joy because we get to work with the most iconic brand on the planet from a beer point of view.
Right, yeah.
It's also the most talked about, but it also has so many people who are so passionate. And that's, again, the joy of it. So many people who are so passionate about Guinness. Yeah. And then the challenge then is making sure that messages like that are well understood. And because we spend a lot of time, and it's a lot of fun. And sometimes when I do these myth busting sessions with people in the storehouse or anywhere else, they're so much fun. I recently presented to a bank, a global bank in Dublin, who just wanted to talk about Guinness innovation, and we talked about how we innovate, and they were comparing it to how they innovate bank products and how they go through their innovation process versus how we innovate in things like NitroSurge or Microdraft or Zero. And but then that was 50% of the session. The second half was all myth busting. People have had all the ideas from 20 years ago about Guinness that now they had an opportunity to get the question answered, and it's so much fun doing those myth busting sessions. But
you see some of the comments we get on videos, like, some Guinness is pasteurized, some Guinness isn't pasteurized, or the cans that you get in North America is brewed. It's not brewed in Ireland, so it's a completely different drink than the ones that you get over there. And so many, it seems like there's so much misconception around the product. But again, like you were saying, that sort of speaks to the fact that it's such a global brand and it's so commonplace and it's so part of the zeitgeist of culture that people just, and that encourages like the creation of these legends, these beer legends that people
absolutely. And even if you look at where we were last time we spoke, and maybe what I think off the top of my head, maybe in another year or two we'll do another session. We call it the Guinness myth busting. Again,
we should
do that. Maybe you get the questions in, and then we'll answer them.
I can make a list for you based on comments on our videos. Yeah, and it's more than enough.
So let's do that.
What would you say is the most curious legend or myth that you had to bust? One that like kind of like you say like, wow, I did not even know that would exist out there. Now I'm gonna pick your brain here.
Let me think. That's putting me on the spot now.
No, okay, that's okay. No, if it can be also just like let's say a widely spread one, like to make it more general.
Pasteurized one was always interesting. The reason Guinness tastes better in Dublin is because it's not pasteurized. That's not true. All Guinness pasteurized to the same level, like most beers. The most interesting one is it true that Guinness tastes so great in Dublin because it's brewed directly from the River Liffey? That one is very popular, which is also not true. But different things like that. The most interesting one, and kind of one of the great examples of the passion people have for Guinness, was around this time when we were talking in the middle of lockdown, a story that made national news was as the bars closed as the COVID lockdowns took place. And obviously, people were at home more and were drinking Guinness draft and can more before we had anything like NitroSurge or anything like
Right.
that.
Right.
And a huge amount of opinion went out about what's the best way to pour your can. And then, because of the popularity of Guinness draft and can grew so much, we actually ran out of the widgets. So we went back to the original widget, which was what we call, we have the floating widget, which is the widget that's in the can.
Yep.
We had originally, which was our original invention, which was the fixed widget in the base of the can, which was our award-winning
Oh.
widget, won the Queen's Innovation Award. So we went back to that. And but the very fact we changed the widget, it made national news in Ireland. That the widget had changed. So it just
a can and it wasn't rattling around.
Yeah,
Panic.
I actually observed people picking up like cases of Guinness and shaking them in supermarkets at the time. So it made national news. And that's how passionate people are about Guinness.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Don't change. And it's really interesting when I go travel around the world, which I am privileged to do in this job. I meet people, and like one of the questions people always say, like, you have the coolest job in the world. Like, people in Ireland must just be jealous of your job. And I'm like, yeah, not really, because people take such ownership of Guinness. We are the ones who are lucky enough to work for Guinness, but our job is not to do anything with Guinness. Do nothing, change nothing, leave it alone. Just keep brewing it. Just keep maintaining the quality.
Leave it as it is,
Leave it alone. It's ours. Change nothing. So it's very interesting when you chat to people about your job. And their expectation is that you just don't change anything, leave everything alone, and make sure you continue to deliver the same consistent quality over and over and over again. And that's why things like Guinness Zero, it's such big news when we release something like Guinness Zero or any of the tech that we've released over the last few years. It's such big news because people are so passionate about Guinness. They take such ownership of it. And this goes from people from the dark corners of rural Ireland to the UK to America to Australia to anywhere else. I got a photograph of a pint of Guinness from a pal of mine in Oman the other day. Delighted watching the US Masters having a Guinness from a keg in Oman. So, all over the world, like, people are just so passionate about it, which is, as I say, the joy and the challenge of working on a wonderful brand like Guinness.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Wow. But one thing I will say, like latching on what you were just discussing, is that it almost becomes like archetypal. Like a drink like Guinness, at least to me, it's almost like quintessential. So I understand the pressure there, right? Like, because it's like, it's something that, and in a country like Ireland, it's probably also generational, right? Like, so it goes beyond your personal life experience. So it's something that people gather around, and there's so much history and significance behind a drink like that. So I can't imagine like the pressure also, in a sense, of being in that position of being the bearer of this flame that you have to bring on to the next generation, maintaining the quality, but still somehow managing to put in an innovation. And that's, to me, is like speaks greatly about like introducing a product like Guinness Zero. It's like you're all of a sudden, you spoke earlier about like being in the rounds, like, and being able to be with your friends and enjoy like a beverage, but maybe for whatever reason you can't enjoy an alcoholic beverage, but you still want to be part of it. Like, I mean, that to me is speaks to exactly something that is important to people and somehow is managed to do with that. And you can be there with your glass and also still like have that same experience without having the potentially negative effects of that might be there. So like that's to me is fascinating, and I like that you described it in that way, because it really brings to light like the challenges, but also like the responsibility, in a sense, that that there is. So fascinating.
And look, when you talk about the generational thing, like there's people I work with who are fourth, fifth generation Guinness employees. Like there's one lady working in the brewery who's fifth generation, whose great grandfather is working in Guinness since the mid 1850s. Wow. We had recently had in the Irish singer Dermot Kennedy, whose great grandfather was a breweryman we managed to find his family history in the archive. So there's some amazing history in the brewery, and we're all very privileged to work for Guinness and be a very, very small part of that history. And our job is to hopefully hand over to the next generation managing quality or brewing in a slightly better place than we found it, and just to continue that history going on. And where we call it the golden age of Guinness, described by my boss very, very eloquently, is we're in this golden age of Guinness where, coming out of COVID, Guinness is having this wonderful period of growth and passion behind it, and things like the innovations coming out like Guinness Zero have supported that, and the technology, all of that has supported this huge surge in popularity for Guinness, which is happening over the last number of years. And we're all very fortunate to be getting to work on Guinness during this time where it is people are so passionate about it, and people are Guinness is cool now. People are consuming it. The age profile of consumers of Guinness is, for the first time in our history, is actually lowering rather than going up. So
I imagine.
people who are trying beers for the first time in their 20s and so on are now trying Guinness, where Guinness has gone from being this old man's drink and my dad's drink to being a Guinness for everyone. More women are consuming Guinness. More young men are consuming Guinness. So it is becoming a beer for the modern age, which is wonderful, and it's wonderful to be working in that time. And hopefully, when in 100 years' time, when people are looking back at this time and looking back at what we've done, they'll think hopefully think we've done a good job, and we're doing Arthur proud.
Well, let me know if you disagree, but I think a lot of that has to do with, of course, social media. And then you have different YouTubers and influencers, whatnot, talking about Guinness. And there's so many channels that have come out of that, right? Of people either reviewing Guinness, talking about Guinness, going around, where's the best pint of Guinness, or reviewing pints of Guinness. And that became kind of like this cultural moment, like a year or two ago, where if you were on TikTok or you on Instagram Reels, and if that was part of your algorithm, if those were the videos you watched, everybody was talking about Guinness, and everybody was talking about pints and the perfect pint and where to go to get the best pint, and all the details that go into what makes the perfect pint. Which leads me to a question. There's something we wanted to ask you about, because there are a lot of people out there, of course, because people are talking about Guinness all the time, that have opinions on what is the right way to pour out any kind of, whether it be Guinness Zero, a widget can of beer, the proper way to do it. So there's some people that think that, you take your time, the 45-degree angle, and then you pour slowly and let the head build. There's some people who say you got to dump it, crack it as quickly as possible, do a hard pour completely upside down. What do you think is the proper way to pour a widget can?
Okay, we're actually doing a video on that at the moment. So anyone who's
so it's
I'm not sure when this is going to go out, but last week Guinness Channel put out a video of me standing actually in the exact same position. We brought a camera crew in here a while ago and filmed. And we've only put out one so far. So we've done is what is due to come out is a number of different ways, a few bloopers on how not to pour it that we're going to
how not to do it. Okay,
which is a bit of fun. But I'm a traditionalist. I've tried the hard pour and all that, and we did a couple of videos, myself and Porrick Fox, over the last number of years on the hard pour versus the 45. I find the best way to do it is 45 degrees, and pour the can as soon as you open it. So as soon as you open the can, start pouring, and you get the smoothest flow out of it. Pour it all in one go. If you do the hard pour, I find, and maybe it's my technique, but I find every time I've done it, I get more bubbles in the head.
You do. You absolutely do,
I pour it steady at 45. I think the key thing with pouring is steady at 45. One is pour it all in one go, because different to the two-part pour on a draft tap is if you when you crack open the can and the widget activates, the widget is activating. So if you do a two-part pour and you leave the liquid in the can, the widget's already activated. That's surging sitting in here. It's not. So when you do a top-up, you're actually limiting the amount of gas that breaks out when you do the top-up. But what's happening in the can is it's all surging anyway. So there's no reason why you wouldn't do it all in one go, because you're essentially topping up with beer that's already settled in the can.
That's
So
interesting because there's a lot of people out there who say, yeah, even with the can pour, to do the 2-part pour and to give it some time, and that's
do it all in one go. Do it all in. So with a
right.
widget can, do it all in one go. Now, when we did
Yeah,
NitroSurge, what we wanted to do was give people the 2-part pour at home. So
yeah,
because the NitroSurge only activates the nitrogen and the CO2 in the beer as it goes through the unit, any Guinness that's left in the can after the first pour hasn't had any gas knocked out of it yet.
okay,
So when you top it up, that agitation breaks out a small amount more of that gas as you top it up. Where in a widget can, it's already broken out and settled, so you're topping up settled beer essentially. So that's why with NitroSurge we say you do the 2-part pour because you're mimicking what happens in the tap when you do
right.
that. But a widget can, 45 degree, pour it as soon as you open the can, and do it all in one go, and you should get a very smooth pour. And that's what I did. So that was the video we went out last week on the Guinness channel. That's exactly what I did, and you'll see I do the hard pour, and I do a couple of other funny ones as well.
Okay, we'll take a look at that for
I'm
sure.
excited.
They might all be out by the time this video comes out, and I'll have huge criticism
Probably.
on social. But
Yeah, this video will probably be out like next week. So yeah,
Hey, but it's good to I thank you for taking the time and walking
pleasure.
us through, because for us it's also just like it's interesting. It's something that, because we both really enjoy Guinness, it's something that when you crack it open you always experiment a little bit. So it's fun to hear that you did it too in a way, and walk us through the process and also the technicality of it that explain why certain thing can happen in a certain way. So thank you very much for doing that.
Yeah.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It's always
It's,
and let's do it again and bust some myths at some point in the future.
No, that's a great idea. I think that's something that we can definitely manage to collect like a few, because there's we've seen just in our comments a
Well-
bunch in the past few years.
Steve, if you have
Coming
like a minute left, speaking of Mythbusters, I wanted to get back to Kilkenny really quickly because on
let's do it.
Wikipedia, I've seen there's some videos online, like the popular thing to do is Wikipedia fact or fiction. There's some things about Kilkenny on the Wikipedia page that to me seemed like a little interesting if they were true. So I want to get your opinion on this.
Sure.
And if you don't know, if it's not something you know for sure, it's totally fine. Don't worry about it. But if you do happen to know about this, then it'd be cool to know. So Wikipedia basically says that Kilkenny grew from Smithwick's. Is that true? Or maybe it was either, and it's very vague on that, but it seems to imply that it was the same beer at one point that was modified.
I wouldn't say they're very similar. So
Okay.
they are. So they're similar in terms of the recipes.
Okay.
So they are similar. They look similar.
They
They're
do.
both red ales.
They definitely do.
Yeah. So their recipes are very similar. They are brewed in James's Gate, totally separate. There's a Smithwick's brew and a Kilkenny brew. So they are brewed separately. So they're not identical. What I wasn't like, I was actually, I remember, would you believe I used to do when I was in college, completely unrelated to the job I ended up going in. I used to do these consumer panels for extra pocket money when I was in college. And one of the consumer panels I did, ironically, was Kilkenny.
Really?
And what we thought of the Kilkenny beer and when it was being developed. So I obviously wasn't working for the company when it was developed, but the building block of it would have been, we have obviously Guinness. People love Nitro Guinness. Can we do something else Nitro? And a Nitro Red Ale from the family, from the farm of the brands that we have and the beers we have is a really good fit. And a nitrogenated red ale is really smooth. You get the sweetness of the red ale coming through from it, and you get all those cues of the nitro experience as well. So that's where it came from. And over the years, Kilkenny, like it's a small brand. Like Smithwick's would be a bigger brand globally than Kilkenny.
Yeah.
But it is, and what we see here in Ireland is tourists absolutely love it. They try Guinness, they try Kilkenny, and it's that nitro taste they love. But they're not the same beer. They are very close. They're very close. They're both red ales. They're both brewed by us. They both use the same yeast, but they are separate recipes, separate brews.
Wikipedia also claims that originally the intent was to be some form of variation on Smithwick's, but the name was changed to Kilkenny because it was felt that it would be easier to pronounce than Smithwick's internationally. This is what it says on Wikipedia.
I believe there's an element of truth to that in some markets. where I think I think because of that, because we do carbonate Kilkenny as well. We do have a carbonated version of Kilkenny,
Is that in the bottle?
which is sold in continental Europe.
Hmm.
And the option was, do we release Smithwick's or do we go with so they wanted a carbonated red ale. And they said, do we go with Smithwick's? And actually, what I believe, and this is all what, again, I'm not 100% on this, what I believe the truth of that was Smithwick's, for a lot of continental European languages who don't speak English as the first language, is very hard to pronounce. So they decided to go with a carbonated version of Kilkenny instead. So Kilkenny exists in a carbonated version and a nitro version. Nitro in the US, in Canada, nitro in Ireland. But in continental Europe, it's actually carbonated.
Interesting, yeah, because we've seen pictures of the bottled version of it, but I'd never.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah, so all the bottles are all carbonated, yeah. And then you have the widget can that you have, and we have draft as well.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you so much, Steve. This was amazing. It was so nice to talk to you again.
Yeah.
No problem.
It was a pleasure having you. Really, thank you so much for taking the time. We really made our day.
No problem at all. Hope we answered a few questions for your.
I'm sure you definitely did. You definitely did.
You did.
We'll do it again.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Okay.